We all know Radiator Springs as the charming little town where Lightning McQueen discovered what truly matters in life. But Radiator Springs wasn't always the warm, welcoming town we know today. In fact, it almost didn't exist at all. It all started in 1909 with a steam-powered car named Stanley. He wasn't looking to start a town, let alone settle down. He was just a radiator cap salesman traveling the desert roads to find overheated cars that wanted to buy a new cap. But one day, this all changed. When Stanley passed through what we now know as Ornament Valley, the land was dry, dusty, and quiet. To Stanley, it looked like nothing more than a place to pass through. But then two strange cars crossed the path. A rusty old tow truck named Mater and a bright red race car named Lightning McQueen. They didn't belong in 1909, but here they were, thanks to a time-traveling accident of Mater. And when Mater realized that Radiator Springs wouldn't be what it is today, if Stanley wouldn't stop to build a town here, he knew he had to do something. So he quickly acted like Lightning needed a cap so that he could talk to Stanley. "Why not stay right here?" Mater said. "This spring could be something special. Cars coming through would give anything for a place to cool off." At first, Stanley didn't see it. He spent his whole life moving from one place to the next. Why settle down? But Mater didn't give up. He showed Stanley how the spring could be a lifesaver for travelers, a place where overheated cars could rest and refuel. Lightning McQueen helped convincing him too, pointing out that the valley's beauty and wide open spaces could make it more than just a stop. As Stanley thought about it, two cars were already coming up, looking to cool off for a bit, and of course, for a new cap. For the first time, Stanley stopped and really looked at the land around him. Maybe this wasn't just another stretch of the desert. Maybe this was an opportunity to build something lasting. So with a little push from Mater and Lightning, Stanley set up his first stand by the spring. He offered water and radiator caps to cars passing through, and soon word began to spread. That is also why he called the town Radiator Springs, since he sold radiator caps and offered cars to cool off by the spring. After Stanley decided to stay, things didn't change overnight. At first it was just him, the spring, and a small stand where he sold radiator caps to passing cars. But Stanley had a vision, and with time, his little business began to grow. Word of the spring spread quickly among travelers. The desert roads were hot and unforgiving, and the spring became a lifeline for overheated cars. Soon, Stanley realized his little stand wasn't enough to keep up with all the visitors. He expanded, building more services to meet the needs of his growing customers. He set up a proper fuel station so cars could fill up tanks. He built a motel for travelers who needed more than just a quick rest. Little by little, the spring became more than just a stop. It became a town. But Stanley couldn't do it alone. Not long after starting his expansion, he met Lizzie, a quirky and quick-witted Model T. They fell in love almost immediately. Together, they worked to make Radiator Springs a place that felt like home to anyone who visited. The town grew, and so did its reputation. It wasn't just about the spring anymore, it was about the community. Cars from all over started to settle in Radiator Springs, bringing their own skills and personalities. A tire shop opened, a paint shop offered custom colors, and even a drive-in theater became part of the town. By the 1930s, Radiator Springs was thriving. It had become one of the most popular stops along Route 66, the famous highway that stretched across the United States. For Stanley, it was more than he had ever imagined. The desert that he once wanted to leave behind had become the heart of something incredible. But as the town celebrated its success, dark clouds were forming on the horizon. Change was coming, and Radiator Springs would soon face its biggest challenge yet. Because by the 1950s, something new was happening across the country. The government began building a massive network of highways, the interstate system. These roads were faster, straighter, and bypassed the winding paths of Route 66. For travelers, it was the future. But for small towns like Radiator Springs, it was the beginning of the end. When the interstate plans were announced, it became clear that Radiator Springs would be left behind. The new highway wouldn't pass through Ornament Valley. It would cut right past it. At first, the townsfolk tried to stay hopeful, but drivers would still choose Route 66 where they could enjoy the scenery and the charm of the towns like theirs. But as the years passed, the truth set in, and barely any car was stepping by now. One by one, cars began to leave. Some moved to bigger cities where they could find work, while others simply couldn't bear to watch the town they loved fade away. So, they stayed. Radiator Springs remained quiet for many years. The few cars who stayed kept things running as best they could, but the town wasn't the same. In the meantime, Stanley had passed away as well, but they kept his memory alive and his statue standing in the town. But the cars that got to see the statue became less with the week. Dust settled on the empty streets until a flash of red came speeding down the road. That flash was none other than Lightning McQueen, a rookie race car who found himself stranded in the town after an accident during the cross-country trip. At first, Lightning didn't care about Radiator Springs, so when he heard he couldn't leave until he had fixed the damage to the road he had caused, he was pissed because to him, this town was just a forgotten stop in the middle of nowhere. But the longer he stayed, the more he saw the heart of the town. Mater, the friendly tow truck, showed him the joy of friendship. Sally, the sleek Porsche, shared the history of Radiator Springs and how much it had once meant to so many. Lightning began to realize that Radiator Springs wasn't just a place, it was a family. And for the first time, he started to feel like he belonged to something bigger than himself. But I think one of the best things Lightning McQueen did in Radiator Springs was discovering Doc Hudson's history. In his eyes, he had been the best race car of all time. He detached Lightning all his secrets. He loved to be involved in the racing world again. Therefore, he eventually became his coach that made Lightning one of the best race cars in the field. And with McQueen's success in the race field, he got to help Radiator Springs because all his fans wanted to see this incredible town Lightning was talking about. At first, Lightning made the dream of Guido and Luigi come true by making them do his pit stops. But now, they could also sell more tires than they could count, even to Ferraris. And Sally could finally make the Wheel Well Motel back to life, like she had always dreamed of. Because Sally also came a long way before she arrived in Radiator Springs. But the moment she arrived there, she knew this would become something special. As she looked at the beautiful view, she fell in love right away. And this is where her love for the Wheel Well Motel came from. And when the town got busier, she finally got it to reopen again. Stanley's dream of a place where cars could come together was finally coming true again. And for Lightning, it was a turning point, a chance to see that life isn't just about speed and trophies and about himself. It's about the friendships you make and the places that feel like home. So, what do you think? Would Radiator Springs still exist if Stanley had passed through? What would Stanley's life have looked like if he didn't stop to build Radiator Springs? Well, we are lucky he did, because whether it's a quiet moment at the Wheel Well Motel or laughter of friends at Flo's V8 Cafe, Radiator Springs continues to shine, proving that sometimes the journey is just as important as the destination. Don't forget to hit that notification bell to join us on our road trip and honk that like button, and we'll see you in the next one.